a minute for people to join in and then get started. Okay, let's get started. Thank you everybody for joining our webinar today. Our webinar is Leveraging Automation in Cybersecurity, Revolutionizing Threat Intelligence. My name is Gitanjali Narang. I'm SVP Sales at Bounteous, and I'll be your moderator for today. Just a quick note before we start, the session today will be recorded and the recording will be shared with you. We'll do Q&A at the end, so please feel free to post your questions using the panel. And if anybody likes a question, please feel free to upvote. We'll try and cover most upvoted questions. Moving on to the speaker introductions, we have an esteemed panel today. We have Claire Van Hinsberg from Vodafone 3. Claire heads Cyber Prevent Engineering for Vodafone 3, and she has been focused on driving automation to deliver business outcomes. Viraj Ratnalikar. Viraj is responsible for customer success at n8n. And last but not the least, we have Sumit Sachdeva. Sumit heads the telco practice at Bounteous. Welcome, Claire, Viraj, and Sumit. I'm really looking forward to an exciting discussion with three of you. Moving on to the agenda for today. In today's webinar, we'll talk about key cybersecurity trends in telco. We'll cover Vodafone cybersecurity objectives, and we'll go deeper into how Vodafone, n8n, and Bounteous have come together to transform Vodafone cybersecurity and some of the exceptional outcomes which the three have achieved together. So stay tuned, and looking forward to some nice questions also towards the end. So just before we start, I thought to help put things into perspective, right? I'll start with a figure from Gartner's research. Gartner claims that the average cost of breach in telco has risen to 5.72 million. And with the advent of AI and with the rise of threats, the security strategies need to be top priority for all the organizations. Adding on to that, telecom sector is the third most vulnerable sector, just behind finance and healthcare. So cyber attack frequency and complexity for telco ranks number 3, and this is only expected to grow. So now that we understand what cybersecurity, how important cybersecurity is for the telecom sector, I'll pass it on to Claire. Let's hear it from Claire on what are the key problems with Vodafone's cybersecurity and how you overcame them on this project. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks, Gitanjali. As Gitanjali just mentioned, the telco industry is a high priority target for bad actors and adversaries. In the current climate, the political unrest and countries being basically at loggerheads with each other is becoming increasingly important as a nation to protect our infrastructure and our assets, such as our communications networks. The government has recognised the importance of this and introduced the Telecom Security Act, which we refer to as TSA just for simplicity. It set out a long list of regulations that we as a network providers such as Vodafone need to adhere to, and in this case specifically for logging and monitoring, which is the area that I've been specifically interested in for automation. We've been doing logging and monitoring obviously for years, but with TSA, it stipulates that the coverage has to be a lot more comprehensive and extensive. Therefore, telcos, not just Vodafone, but all of us, are having to ensure that more assets are not just being logged locally, but also stored centrally, so that we can use that data to identify larger patterns and then retain it for a lot longer. So now we might retain something for 90 days, we have to do 13 months. This means that there's going to be more assets, more data types, And therefore, that's going to result in more monitoring being required and more alerts being generated. Given that we already process 3 to 5 billion events per month and have thousands of alerts every month, we've already got a really busy CSOC and engineering team that manage our security platforms. So the challenges, the manual process we used in engineering and CSOC are time consuming. And as we increase logging and monitoring, that's going to result in a resource drain. We need to increase resources exponentially unless we work smarter rather than harder. So the solution, what we came up with is we started looking at SOAR options. We looked at traditional tools such as IBM Resilient and Tynes, and we did proof of concepts with some of those. And although great, they could help with the SOAR issues, but they couldn't really address our overall workflow capability and issues. So we looked at other low-code, no-code platforms such as OutSystems, Pega, Mendix, even Power Automate, all of which are great tools, but weren't really security focused at the time. So when we found n8n, which did both, it provides SOAR capability and a workflow capability. It provided a low code model as well as the ability to code in for more complex workflows and integrations. So it kind of did everything that we wanted all in one tool, and it allowed us to create a modular solution. By that, I mean, you can approach workflow as just do one workflow and do it end to end and then sub workflows, and you just do things specifically for that workflow. With n8n, we were able to create modules. So we broke down our workflows and looked at what we could reuse and use not just in our own other workflows, but actually in other teams or in other spaces. So because basically once you've got an email module, you've got an email module, you can use it anywhere. The next thing we needed to do was do this quickly. We can't wait around forever. So we looked at partners, and we went to quite a few different people, and we actually selected Bounteous as our accelerator. And the reason we did that was they listened and they understood what our requirements were. They provided flexibility within what we could and couldn't do as well. And they took ownership. So once we'd explained what we wanted and how we kind of wanted it to be done, they took over the discovery, they created the solution. They also manage and the infrastructure for n8n because our engineers were already too busy, and they built out the solution that we wanted that gave us that flexibility and reusability. Viraj will now demonstrate that to you as he goes over n8n's capabilities.
Thanks, Claire. So in a second, we'll see the n8n canvas, or the UI that you'd see is once you log into n8n and start building a workflow. Now, in this case, we've taken an example that uses Kibana and works on resolving tickets more quickly and more efficiently. So each block or node that you see on your screen right now, that represents an operation in our flow. You'll see certain blocks are orange with the arrow. Those are the modules that Claire referred to earlier. So these are all, reusable components that can be used across multiple workflows. We talked about modularizing the email sub workflow, so that's something that we'll dive into in a second. And then you can have similar ones, for example, for upserting database records, any, repeatable operation that has maybe a fixed set of inputs and then a fixed outcome or output as well. Now you also see the curly brackets, the yellow, those are code blocks. Now, these allow you to write Python or JavaScript, and again, we'll cover them later. And everything else, for example, the green loop, the two arrows, these are examples of low-code blocks in n8n. So these are used in cases where it's quicker just to drop in a no-code or low-code block than it is to write code from scratch. On the next slide, we'll go into a view of the node settings view. So when you click into one of these nodes, you'll see on the left, you've got your input pane. You can see all the data that's flowing into that operation. In the middle, you've got the setting. So all the green highlights there are actually pulling either environment variables or input data that's been passed into that particular node. And then on the right, we see the output from that node. Right now, it's displayed as a table, but you could have it as JSON. You could also have it in schema view just to get a feel when you're building for what kind of data or data types there are in this workflow. And you'll see it says view sub execution. So one of the intentional decisions we've taken with n8n is to have both the data and the operation pretty close together. So if in this case, by clicking view sub execution, I could see exactly what input was passed into that search case sub workflow and see what was processed and what the outcome of the output was as well. Then I talked a little bit about writing code. So if we dive a little bit into that, you'll see on the next slide that code has been written. And in these cases, it was deemed that code would actually achieve things faster rather than using the built-in low-code nodes. You can write code in n8n in either Python or in JavaScript, and again, importing external libraries and modules is also possible as well. Now, in this case, what we're seeing is Kibana. So as soon as this workflow has started, we're seeing that case in Kibana being marked as in progress. That's the yellow tag that we saw just earlier. And once it's been marked as in progress, one of the next steps in the workflow is sending an email. And that's what we'll see next. So in this case, once the workflow runs, you'll see an email is sent. It's in the inbox, and we've got these two buttons, yes or no, requiring an input or a human in the loop response from the user that's been selected as the SME or the right person to surface this suspicious login attempt to. And then what we can see is if we click on, or if we go to the next slide, we can look at exactly how this module or this send email module has worked. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that n8n obviously has a dark mode as well for the hardcore engineers who prefer using dark mode as well as light. Now in this flow, we're passing in data, so recipients, the email content, the email subject, and then we have an Outlook node at the end that's configured to send an email using that data. You can of course pass through additional optional data parameters if you need to, whatever you need to get that email sent out. And if you're not using Outlook, you could easily put in a Gmail node at the end, or even an IMAP node to be able to send from virtually any email service. n8n is built with that flexibility in mind. Everything is drag and drop, so while you can write code or write JavaScript scripting to reference certain properties, you can also just drag and drop from the input view into the output or into the settings pane as well. And now if we go back to the email, we'll see that once you click that yes or no button, that takes you to a form, which, as you might have guessed, is also generated with n8n. I'll just give a second for the slide to change. And you'll see once this form opens up, you'll have just a quick comment on the case. And once that's submitted, the second line of this n8n workflow is triggered. So this is only triggered once that form is submitted. And we'll see shortly the data. I think there's a bit of lag possibly. We'll see the data that is received by this form and how it flows through. And again, all we're doing here is once this is marked as a legitimate threat, it's going to close. It's going to update the case in Kibana, and it's going to add these case comments there as well. Creating the form, hosting the form, generating the URL, all of that is handled by n8n, again in this quite low-code way, and again with the option to write code to handle that response once it's in. So there we have it. Maybe just a quick 10-foot view on an example workflow that's triggered based on Kibana cases, prompting the relevant subject matter expert by email to check and verify if the alert is legitimate. If it is, as in this case, an email is triggered to the relevant team member, and the case can be closed directly from the comfort of one's inbox. This is just one of 30+ workflows that has contributed to Vodafone's cost and time savings so far, which Claire will talk about in more detail. But before handing on to Claire, I'd maybe call upon Sumit and say, n8n gives you more than the ability just to build workflows. It also handles deployment and monitoring and all of the typical things you might expect when writing or when engineering in code. So Sumit, could you share a bit more, please, on how Bounteous uses n8n to leverage CI/CD best practice in a low-code environment?
Definitely. Thank you, Viraj. If we could go on the next slide. Now, on top of Viraj, what rightly just highlighted, it's the usage of the platform and the flexibility that it allows. And I would just like to call out some of the key areas, which helped us in the design and development, which has been done using environments capability in n8n. In fact, that enables the entire CI/CD, the DevOps lifecycle. And utilizing environments in n8n, we were able to build, develop, test, and deploy code and applications. And this allowed us to, easily and securely create and update workflows and take them through the lifecycle. And also, as you can see on the screen, it's also allowed for version control and log streaming capabilities. Now, speaking about workflows, which we were able to do on this program, our team helped in developing several reusable workflows, which added to the repository for Vodafone. And to cite some examples, there's one for fraud detection, which essentially is, the ability to provide IP geolocation and fraud detection services to help businesses localize content, enhance security, and detect suspicious online activities. I'll take one more example, which is around detecting malware, blacklistings, and security vulnerabilities, which basically analyzes the network request and checks for any phishing, suspicious redirects, and any such type of cybersecurity attacks. Now, with that, let me hand it over to Claire to talk about some of the outcomes and impacts from the program.
Thanks, Sumit. So since we launched our n8n capability and our first SOAR workflows, we only launched our first workflows back in August 2024. So last year, so we've not even been using n8n for a year yet, fully. We've launched 33 workflows, and within there, we've also launched sub workflows. So, and we have more in the pipeline. And now it's not just for logging and monitoring for engineering and SOAR. We're actually looking at it for other cyber engineering platforms as well. By introducing n8n, we've been able to enhance our monitoring and our checks, as Sumit mentioned, that would have previously been either impossible or have taken a lot of effort. For example, just looking at, Sumit mentioned the SOAR side, but from an engineering side, we're now taking in a huge number of data feeds that basically, as part of TSA, we have to make sure that they're always feeding. And so we've created a use case and a workflow that allows us to monitor those feeds for, and let's say there's about 50 of them at the moment, because we have collectors. And they're passing a huge amount of data. Now, when one of those disappears, we need to very quickly identify why it's disappeared. So the workflow that we've got in place now checks every 5 minutes to see, is the feed still working? Is it still running? And if it isn't, it will do basic triage. It'll identify whether it's our fault. Is it, it's on our side, or is it on the user side, or is there something else going on? If it's something that it doesn't recognize, then it will drop to a manual flow. But that process would take us quite a long time. Just even doing the checks it'd take us 10 minutes to do the checks for one feed. So if you extrapolate that, it means we'd never be able to do those checks every 5 minutes and act on them as quickly. So it's making it so much more proactive, and it's allowing us to work smarter, like I said, rather than harder. Our workflows now don't just support our SOAR and our CSOC team, but they support our onboarding, so how we get our data feeds in combined with a portal. They support our engineering, both within n8n itself and within Prism, and it also helps with our content creation as well as the SOAR capability. And because it's all modular, the speed at which we can now generate workflows is exponentially increased. So before we used to have to create all the modules, and to be honest, the longest part always was the integration with other people. That's completely sped up, and anything that we've got now we can reuse. So if we need an email module, we need to integrate with IBM Resilient for ticketing or whatever, we can literally do it a lot quicker, and then it allows us to kind of implement our new workflows a lot quicker. So that's kind of exciting, and everything that we've done is reusable. So not just for us, but if anybody else across Vodafone or Three want to reuse our capability, we can literally give them the architecture, we can give and set them up with it very quickly, and we can also set up with a base set of modules now as well, so they don't have to do the hard work that we've already done. Reuse is really important when you're using workflow, and you need to kind of leverage that. So some figures for you. So implementing n8n, I've already said we've launched 33 workflows. That's actually saved us since August last year about 5,000 person days, which is crazy. And it's avoided, I'm saying avoided because we probably wouldn't have done it if we had to do it with people, around 2.2 million so far. And this year we're looking at a continued saving of about 300k a month. So that's a huge difference, and it's just exponentially improved our capability. So it's a more efficient, it's a smarter way of working, and it's freeing up our valuable analyst and engineer resources to focus on higher value work. And it enhances Vodafone's ability to protect the UK, our employees and our customers. Gitanjali?
Thank you, Claire.
Back to Viraj, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. It's really heartening to see what Vodafone, n8n, and Bounteous, how we have come together and achieved such remarkable outcomes, like in less than a year, and especially the reuse element of it, right? Because there's so many others who can reuse what has already been implemented, and again, they could probably see similar savings even in shorter time frame. So yeah, it's a great story. Thank you. And again, moving on to the next part of our discussion, right? I think, Claire, you need to go on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah, it goes. Moving on to next part of our discussion. No conversation these days is complete without us talking about AI. So let's spend some time on AI and discuss how we plan to embrace AI going forward in this partnership. So I'll hand it over to Viraj first to speak about what n8n are doing with AI in cybersecurity.
Thanks, Gitanjali. All right, so this is, I think, quite an exciting one to think about, and it's shaped by, obviously, conversations with Claire and the Vodafone team, but also other security teams that we've worked with. And I think if there's one thing that virtually everyone agrees on, it's that AI is going to be used by adversaries to increase both the frequency of cyber attacks, but also their quality or their sophistication. I guess that sounds quite doom and gloom. So maybe to kind of bring things back into some balance, obviously AI plays for both sides. So it can also be leveraged by SOCs. And I think one of the ways in which this is going to be very powerful is using AI to learn from what's been done in the past. And I'll talk more about both these points in a second. And then finally, just ending on looking ahead, I think we're going to come full circle. Maybe some of you in the audience have played with tools like Replit, Cursor, Lovable. And I think thanks to vibe coding, as well as the workflow component of that with n8n, it's going to reduce the cost and time of building with AI. So diving into the first of those, more frequent attacks with more sophistication. It's obviously now a lot cheaper to launch these attacks. And one thing on the next slide you'll see is this isn't some future eventuality, it's happening today. Maybe the best example of this in recent memory is there's a news story of a company, I believe in Hong Kong, where one of their employees was scammed by a deepfake, where he jumped onto a video call with some of the C-suite, with the executives, who asked him to transfer quite a sizable amount of money to a third-party account. Obviously, LLMs or AI in general is key in building deepfake videos like this, and I think we're going to see this trickle down into phishing, into almost any sort of social engineering type attack, where it's now much cheaper to personalize that to the recipient or to the victim that's being sent to. Taking this into a bit more depth, so there's a toolkit that Anthropic have put together called Incalmo. You'll see a rough sketch there in beige. So LLMs have shown some early promise in completing CTF-style challenges. There's limited evidence right now, so I wouldn't kind of say this is happening today to this extent. There's limited evidence that AI can successfully execute real-world cyber attacks end-to-end. But looking at this toolkit, researchers are able to specify high-level actions to an LLM, for example, infecting a host or scanning a network. And then these actions were converted by the AI agent, part of the workflow, into lower-level primitives. So, for example, executing commands to exploit certain tools. And again, the agent tool architecture is really key to doing this, and that you could build with n8n or a number of tools in the market. Now, in the vast majority of these attacks that were simulated by researchers, this toolkit achieved at least some of the attack goals. And I think that is in 90% plus of cases. So really now starting to show signs of, I guess, going towards that world where end-to-end attacks can be executed by a series of AI agents working in collaboration. I think we're still unclear exactly when that first attack might happen or how long it might take. But I think it's quite telling that Malwarebytes named agentic AI as probably one of the most notable new security threats in its 2025 State of Malware report, and thinks we could be living in a world of agentic attackers as soon as this year. So what do you do as a SOC to keep up? Now, on the next slide, I argue that SOCs will have to leverage AI in order to keep up, and especially to defend against AI-driven attacks. So currently, we're seeing AI, I think, being used more as a co-pilot. So perhaps there's some sort of chat interface, making human analysts more efficient and enabling them to spend more time asking questions and less time answering them. What we'll move to, I think, is a scenario where AI partially becomes a SOC analyst or handles large parts of what would have typically been the analyst role, especially within something like incident response. So we have here a workflow. It's based with an n8n AI agent. We called it MITRE agent. And it's feeding in. So one of its tools is a vector store with a lot of the MITRE TCPs vectorized and stored there. And what this workflow does is it takes Jira tickets and using the LLM, it identifies, what are the relevant TCPs here, both to categorize the attack based on the ticket data, but also to suggest to the analyst what the next step might be. So you essentially have this situation where there's a customized playbook for every single attack that's ready to roll, that either the analyst can just check, trigger, or in some cases, parts of it may already have triggered, for example, to enrich some of the ticket data. I think one way to extend this is to teach AI what's been done in the past, both successfully and unsuccessfully, so that you can adapt these playbooks every single time you face a similar attack. So that's, I guess, the next step we'll be looking to take this would be then to add a vector store of past cases and what those TDPs were and how they were solved, or in some cases what didn't work, so we know not to try that again. And then taking this one step forward, I think Philip, who some of you might know, is quite an active voice in the cybersecurity world, shared this opinion a few days ago, which I think really captures, what I think the future will look like very well. There was a time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where a lot of SOC tools were hand-built because of custom needs, but it took engineers several days or several weeks or months, perhaps, in small teams to build these tools. Now, as the frequency and the sophistication of attacks grow, I think companies will once again in-house the building of their AI tool, of their security tools, rather than buying directly off the market. I talked about vibe coding earlier. It does lower the barrier to a SOC building tooling. And I think one of the, I think it's almost inevitable that some variation of it is adopted by SOCs. Perhaps there'll be challenges for sure. So, for example, making sure the tools in themselves are secure is going to be a challenge. That's one of the current drawbacks. But I think in a world in which it takes an engineer just 1 day or 2 days to build a customized tool, no longer needs a team, it's hard enough to see a future in which this is at least part of the AI future. Now, bringing all this together, I think Claire will run through the roadmap for Vodafone, talking about what the next steps are in the immediate future, but then going on into this AI-powered world that we foresee. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you. So yeah, what's next for Vodafone? So we're going to continue to enhance our existing workflows. So as I alluded to earlier, we work in an agile way and we've done this very iteratively. So we haven't just done the whole thing where it's all automated and everything's singing and dancing in one go. What we're doing is we're gradually building up the capability as we build trust in the different parts of the workflow. We're then adding to it. So, this was a whole new scary world for our SOC team and for our engineers. It was, how do we make it so that it's less kind of intrusive? So we're going to continue to enhance the existing workflows that we've got and hopefully get more benefits from those, moving all the way through to actually remediation, because at the moment we're more in the identification, triage, alerting, that kind of side. We're also looking at new SIEM workflows, but we're also not just looking at the SIEM workflows. We're actually looking at workflows across cyber prevent. There's lots of areas that could benefit from engineering automation or from other kind of SOAR capability, but not quite the same. Similar, but slightly different. So we'll be extending the platform. That also means we're going to need an additional instance. So we will be setting up one that's outside of our own workspace, which we host currently in the cloud. So it is a cloud-based solution, but it's our own cloud. I believe we can get capability if we wanted to from n8n as well and host it in theirs. But right now we're own hosted. We're also looking at potentially hosting it on-prem. So there's lots of options around that we're looking at. And then probably a little bit more exciting is, how do we adopt the AI capability that Viraj has just been mentioning? So we want to utilize AI to our advantage, whether that's either from the kind of the tooling that's in n8n or integrating n8n with our own LLM to automate our existing playbooks, for example, and integrating into our automation frameworks. So there's loads of stuff that we want to do, and it's going to be a very busy year for the team. Sumit, would you like to just recap the key callouts and learnings that we've had?
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Claire. Moving on to the next slide. Claire, thank you. I think it's been a fantastic experience, working together with Vodafone and n8n in this program. And I know there's a lot more to do. Just wanted to share some of the key learnings that we've had from the program. And of course, it's been a great collaboration across teams and organizations, as I was just saying, across Vodafone's cybersecurity team, with Bounteous as the integration partner and bringing in some domain experience. And then n8n with the core platform, which has enabled the entire journey for us. And we've all been working together across different departments, roles, and different skill levels. And one of the key learning, and which is also, I believe, one of the core strength of n8n, is the ability to enable co-creation between business and technical teams. With n8n's intuitive interface and modular capabilities, we saw non-technical users also participate in workflow designs, while technical teams had options to go much deeper wherever needed. And also as a team, we were able to reinforce or bring to light the strength of modular workflow design, which helped us to simplify maintenance and rapidly iterate and ensure consistency across complex workflows. And this has been a huge enabler for us for scaling. And finally, our biggest learning was the automation work done on real-world cybersecurity, areas and challenges across threat detection responses, and which gave us a lot of practical insights, both on the power of automation enabled by n8n and its limitations, which we are addressing as something specific which can be done with the evolving world and the new challenges. With this, I would hand over back to Gitanjali. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. Thanks, Claire and Viraj. I hope the audience has found the session very useful. So we'll move on to Q&A. Before we start the questions, there's a few of you who have asked for contact details. So while we do the Q&A, this slide will stay on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to any of us in case you have any further questions or you would want to have a further conversation. Right, moving on to Q&A. Claire, the first one is for you. How has Vodafone's implementation of SOAR platforms transformed your response approach and how quickly you respond?
It's definitely increased our responsiveness. So basically, alerting was, it's kind of, you pick it up as you go, depending on severity and everything. Now we're actually picking things up so automatically. So for certain use cases, we will literally, it'll just go through the SOAR, it'll do the initial investigation, triage, see if it's really a problem, because a lot of what we do is actually finding out, is this actually a problem or not? So it's meant that our team, even though we've increased our assets over the last 2 years by about 50%, and that's a lot of assets, by the way, and that therefore has exponentially increased our alerting. It means that we haven't had to increase our SOAR team, our SOC team, and it means that we're still handling the same number, more alerts, quicker, easier, simpler. And it also means that from an engineering perspective, which is slightly different, it means that we're now picking up on drop feeds much more proactively, whereas previously it was very reactive. So we'd notice maybe a little bit late that they disappeared, whereas now it's much more proactive. So also, just to kind of point out, I mentioned that we'd saved 5,000 person days previously. Over about 3,000 of those are related to SOC use cases. So that's a lot. We'd have needed a very big team to be able to do the checks and balances that we've been doing with n8n. Hope that answers your question.
Yep. Thank you, Claire.
No worries.
And I see a lot of interest in n8n. So the next one has to be for Viraj. Viraj, what other use cases do you have and where n8n have significantly improved cybersecurity measures within a large enterprise?
All right. I think where to start is the question on this one. Quite a few areas. So I guess incident response is always a big one. There's a little bit around the threat intel, the tip side of things. But I think some of the second or one of the key workflows that we see a lot of companies using in this space is around phishing. And the way that works is with n8n, you set up an inbox, phishing attempts at companyname.com. All the employees can forward emails to that address. And when the n8n workflow, when it receives an email on that address, it triggers a set of actions. And that can be carrying out a virus total scan. It could be sandboxing any malicious files, checking for IPs against known databases of malicious IPs, that sort of thing. And can very quickly give take action and give a quick response to the user saying, yep, 20% chance this is phishing, you're probably good, or hey, this is almost certainly phishing, and take actions, for example, locking out accounts, escalating to managers, and so on. And I guess AI is being used more and more in these sort of workflows where maybe the email content is being passed by an LLM that has examples of phishing attempts to add a further layer of accuracy or certainty when these sort of decisions are made. I hope that gives a flavor of some of the other directions in which n8n is being used.
Thank you, Viraj. I'm sure you'll have lots of follow-up questions. So we'll take one more question. With AI rapidly gaining traction, what are the primary obstacles telecom companies face in scaling AI integrations, and how can they overcome the lack of in-house AI expertise? Claire, I'll pass this one over to you.
I think this is a great question. I'm sure Summit will want to chip in on this one as well, but I don't think AI adoption and skills is actually a problem. I think people are really keen to adopt AI. I mean, look at everybody. You go to conferences and stuff, and everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's building some form of AI into their tools. So I think actually it's nice. It's a shiny thing to learn about. Everybody's keen to do it. So I don't think skills and adoption are necessarily a challenge. I think people will want to pick up those skills and then leverage the capability and the tools that they already have when they bring out AI. I know I'm keen on looking at the AI capability in n8n. I think the real problem we have is how we protect against our adversaries, as the threats that are becoming more intelligent. So Viraj already mentioned like the bank, which is a pretty well-known example, but they lost 25 million. I mean, how do you protect against deep fake video calls that are then combined with advanced linguistics and also emails as well? So, which effectively phishing emails, but they're using the same domains, they're using all this intelligent stuff, and they're bringing all of these different threats or these different tools together to actually attack us. So, and they make a really convincing story. So, social engineering, I think, is like a sweet spot for AI right now, and they're getting better at mimicking our human behaviors. So we need to kind of figure out how we use AI to our advantage to combat that. So I think it's more about how do we use AI to our advantage rather than the adoption and the skills. It's like leveraging the tools that are available. Also, AI is kind of it's making everybody hacking accessible to everyone. So as long as you've got a dodgy LLM without any filters, like the ones we use in work and everything have some kind of moral code and standards, although if you ask the right questions you can get around those. It's making things easier, more accessible to bad people. So we need to figure out how we leverage AI in the same way to be able to combat that, whether that's understanding how they're mimicking humans, how they're leveraging AI for threats. And we need to do that. And that could be through training, it could be through tooling, loads of different ways. So yeah, for me, we've got a bigger problem than skill shortage. I think we need to focus on how we protect against it. Summit, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Claire. And I agree, because being on the SI side, we see tons of examples like these. We know that using AI is a new norm, and everybody's using AI for almost everything. We are using it for development. We are using it for operations. We are using it for for looking at our traffic, building applications, and everything. So and it's becoming easier and easier. There's a lot of abstraction in knowing something, being able to develop something. So to your point, Claire, I think it's the skill will not be a challenge. The challenge would be how do you make sure the right data is getting controlled, it's not getting exposed. How do we make sure, of course, using AI for building security applications, but then security against AI or for AI as well, right? How do we make sure there's security who's controlling all of this? So that's going to be the focus, and that's the next challenge that we would also love to work on. You're on mute, Kitanjali.
All right. Thank you, Sumit and Claire, for the answer and a very different perspective to it also. While AI is here to make things faster, it is here to add more work as well for all of us. So the next one is from Chris. This one is again for Viraj. Viraj, is it possible that you share your n8n flow JSON code maybe?
Happy to, yeah. So I guess not for the Vodafone ones, unless Claire wants those shared, but we have lots of templates. Actually, if you go to, I thought so, but fear not. We have anonymized, workflows for cybersecurity. It's one of our top categories. If you go to n8n.io/workflows, you'll have templates. And Chris, if you have anything specific, shoot me a message afterwards, and I'll see if we can get something made for you, or if something might exist off the shelf.
Thank you. All right. I think we probably answered this one over the various questions, but this one is, hi Claire, what other use cases have you applied n8n to? What other AI capabilities will you be exploring beyond SOC and engineering?
So I'm not sure what you mean by what other AI capabilities will we be exploring beyond SOC and engineering, but from an n8n perspective, we'll be looking at, we're not just doing the SOC and the engineering side, we're actually using it for a lot of our onboarding capability to integrate with our demand processes, onboarding. So I don't know if you guys are ever involved in onboarding anything to any system or platform, especially a SIEM platform and CyberArk and that kind of stuff. It takes quite a lot of effort. So we're actually using that to kind of manage our demand. So demand coming in from people, to be able to automate things, to be able to trigger different processes, to trigger other automation tools. So it kind of goes a little bit wider than just SOAR and basic engineering. We're using it actually as part of the experience for our users and the people that have to engage with us for self-service as well. AI capabilities, the big one that we're really looking for with AI is kind of like patterns, but also we're looking for ways that we can integrate with the LLM to help our advisors kind of understand things better or do things in a different way or spot things that they wouldn't normally have spotted, because a computer can do a lot more sometimes than a human can. We're also looking at using AI for, I think Viraj mentioned this as well, is the playbook side. So as we get more information, we can, initially create the playbooks automatically, but then we can actually enhance them like real time. So we don't have to have our advisors and our analysts going in all the time to kind of make those updates and changes. So we have the latest information. And the other areas around threat intelligence as well. So we obviously have threat platforms that basically take threats from all different areas. AI could help us to identify what's kind of pertinent to ourselves. So, those kind of things. But yeah, I can't really necessarily share my use cases because they're a bit secret. So I'll have to avoid that one, I'm afraid, Gitanjali.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Claire. I think we have time for one last question. Again, another one for Viraj. Viraj, any plans for zero knowledge proof processing nodes for n8n?
So zero knowledge proof processing, I'm guessing this is when you don't want the n8n workflow builders to see certain, to see what's inside, what the inputs are to the workflow. Is that correct? Is there any more information, or should we assume that that's what the question means?
That's the information.
All right.
Tara, Powell, in case you have any more details, you can probably add that to the question.
So,
or you can just answer, Viraj.
Yeah, I'll give it a quick stab, and happy to connect afterwards if the question's slightly different. We have had this request, so customers do want ways to obfuscate private data from within the n8n input-output bundles. It's something we're looking at. I wouldn't say that we have a fixed date for it, but it's a request that we have had before, and we'll be putting it in our mix of prioritizations for the next couple of quarters.
Thanks, Viraj. Thank you, everybody, for staying on, and thank you for hearing us. We hope you enjoyed and you found the session useful. Please feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any further questions. Thank you. Thanks, Claire, Sumit, and Viraj.